All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. I hope you're doing well this morning. So, today I'm going to do an Epstein update. Epstein update. And I haven't done one in a while. So, where I left off is he winds up dead, right? And then immediately after he winds up dead, Clinton body count trends on Twitter. And I had never looked into, I'd read an audiobook about the Bushes a couple years ago. So I know more about the Bush family. But essentially, they're cut from the same cloth and the same type of family. But the Clintons, they really do have an insane amount of friends and colleagues that have either died from a single gunshot wound to the head that's been ruled a suicide or like a plane crash. They've had something like 12 bodyguards wind up dead. It's just nuts. I was laughing at the thought of maybe they're not sketchy at all and they're not killing any of these people, but they're just extremely boring to hang out with. Like Bill Clinton's hanging out, having a cocktail, talking to one of the bodyguards, and he's like, "I'll tell you another story I think you'll like." And the bodyguard's just like, "Just shoot me. Just shoot me in the head and call it a suicide. Kill my family. I don't care. I can't hang out with you people any longer. I can't listen to another story about Arkansas, please." Or like a couple's flying in a little Cessna plane. They got the headphones on, and the wife's like, "Remember, we're going to have dinner with the Clintons this Sunday." The husband's just like, crashes the plane. Turns out they're just not even corrupt at all. They're just really a bore. But yeah, like YouTubers like Sean Atwood and stuff have been dealing with the Clinton body count and stuff like that for years. So check he made an Epstein playlist, and he's going real far down the rabbit hole. So check that out if you like. But so the Clinton body count trended immediately, and then I saw that yesterday Les Wexner. So if you remember, I did a video called Epstein, the Mysterious Money, where talking about, you would think someone with as much money as Epstein, there'd be a lot of business deals that he did. Well, there's really not. He only worked with one guy, and his name was Les Wexner. And he owns L Brands, which is Victoria's Secret and Pink, and I think Bed Bath & Beyond. And way back when, one of the first times that Epstein had a run-in with the cops, he was pretending to be a recruiter for Victoria's Secret and kind of, I don't know, attacked this girl or made a move, and she screamed, and they called the cops. And the executives for L Brands at least a few times got calls and being like, "Do you know this Jeffrey Epstein guy? He's pretending to be a recruiter." And then they would tell Les, like, "This, your friend Jeffrey is attacking women. Can you please handle this?" But then, of course, now after this whole thing has come out, Les is like, "I had no idea. Nothing. I was taken advantage of by a friend, and I had no idea that he was depraved and gross." It's just like, come on, Les. Come on, Les. That's what you're going with, of just like, I had no idea. But yesterday, so L Brands, primarily Victoria's Secret, is tanking right now. I think they're down 35% this year. And so yesterday they had this giant investor meeting where all the investors come in. So one, he had to start the meeting by explaining why he was best friends with an international child trafficker. Get that smoothed out. And then after he had to explain that, he had to then explain why the brands are tanking. And it was interesting. Just imagine being an investor and seeing Les up there just being like, I had no idea at all about Jeffrey Epstein. And you're like, okay. And then I was reading this article's from CNBC, and they're talking about Victoria's Secret, and it says the company, by its own admission, stayed tied to its sexy imaging of Victoria's Secret stores for far too long, as its shoppers looked for more comfortable and inclusive options sold by brands such as Third Love and blah blah blah. So all these other brands are making and marketing like, this bra will be comfortable and support you, and Victoria's Secret still like, this bra will make your tits look big. I was laughing too at the thought of like a board meeting at Victoria's Secret, and they're all sitting there and it's quiet because the numbers are horrible and there's graphs behind everybody with just lines shooting down. And one of the designers is like, maybe should we make something that's like comfortable? Maybe like more comfortable than and Les is like, no, more sexy. Make it sexier. And the artists that are sketching it out are like, I don't know. How do you make any of this And he's like, make it sexier. And the graphs are just tanking. So Victoria's Secret fired the advertising, like the head of advertising, and like, so they're trying to do this whole, so we're going to see, I think this was decided yesterday, we're going to see a whole new ad campaign. They're going to rebrand. It's going to be interesting to see the empowerment side of Victoria's Secret. They also said that their big fashion show that used to be this big cultural popular thing, no one really cares about it anymore. And then they also, I think that the top investors are starting to discuss, how long is Les going to be around in this whole thing? He still owns 16% and is the chief of whatever staff. And so I think the thought is like, all right, I think Les has maybe outstayed his welcome. But anyway, I thought that was pretty interesting. I'm going to follow to see what Victoria's Secret changes their vibes to. And then, so they went through Epstein's townhouse here in New York City after he died, the one that I went and walked around the outside of. And inside the apartment, as most of you know, they found that giant picture of Bill Clinton in a blue dress and red pumps, like with his legs crossed, doing like a sexy face. And so I'm on news.artnet.com, and a guy named Ben Davis wrote an interesting article about how, so that painting was painted by a woman named Patrina Ryan Clyde. So she paints that painting of Clinton in 2012 as part of her college thesis. And she painted that one of Bill and then one of George Bush, like sitting Indian style on the floor of the Oval Office, throwing a paper airplane with this horrifying childlike look on his face, like, we war, oil, yay. And so this one, the one about Bill is called Parsing Bill, and the one about the one of Bush is called War Games. And now I don't even think she is an artist anymore. She works for something in New York City. So she paints these two paintings in 2012 as her thesis, and then they sell at some auction to fundraise, I think for the college that she went to. And so the Bill Clinton one sells. She loses track of it. You know, this is her thesis, but someone buys it. It's cool if your thesis is good enough for someone to buy. You know how many college theses are just worthless? It's like, all right, good job. Here's your diploma. No one cares. But so she's sitting there probably just working one day, and she sees on the news that Jeffrey Epstein owned her painting. And just to have your thesis come up as relevant is pretty cool. I'm a fan. Patrina Ryan Clyde. And there was a site that sold prints of it that were all sold out. So I'm hoping that she can just make a living off of selling prints of this painting, or who knows. So she all of a sudden is just probably staring at the news like, that's my college thesis. Epstein owned it? And then a few other things that they found in his giant New York townhouse were prosthetic eyeballs were on display as decoration. He had a female mannequin hanging from the chandelier. Nothing ties a room together like a nice, dead, cold mannequin hanging from the chandelier. Who wants to look at that on a day-to-day basis? That seems like something that Bam Margera would have had in his mansion when he was 25. He also had a chessboard of the pieces were his staff in their underwear. So imagine coming in to Epstein's den or office or something, and you're like, can I grab you something? And Epstein's like, yes, can you grab me a sandwich and a glass of ice water? And you're like, yeah, sure. And as you leave the room, he moves your chess piece where you're in your underwear to a different spot. It's just like, oh, God. And then you turn around to walk out of the room and you almost bump into the hanging mannequin. It's just like, I fucking hate working here. What a nightmare of a dude. Yeah, I can't relax on a Sunday. I can't unwind without a nice mannequin hanging from the chandelier. And then, so when he wound up dead, I feel like it went just, the case sort of shattered off in a million directions. So the few directions I'm following are, there's a woman named Ghislaine Maxwell who was his ex-girlfriend, and a big player in going and getting all these young women. And she is nowhere to be found. They thought she was maybe in a mansion in Massachusetts, but the owner, some tech billionaire, is saying that she's not there, but everyone in the community is like, she's there. We know she's there. We've seen her. And then there's another guy named Jean-Luc Brunel who has come out. They think he was the main procurer of children for Epstein. A procurer. Hi, I'm a procurer. And the main picture they have of this Brunel guy going around, he has like sharp features, and if you were casting a pedophile in a movie, you would cast Brunel. It's just perfect. He's wearing a tux in the picture and a top hat, and he just looks like every evil little weasel pedophile predator that you would ever think about. So this Brunel guy, where's he at? The procurer. Let's get him arrested. Let's get him in. Nowhere to be found. He is completely disappeared. The French said that there's no forwarding address, there's no social media accounts, he's totally uncontactable. Agents are looking for him in France and in Brazil and in the United States. So I feel like this whole ring was ready when the shit hits the fan to just disappear. There's probably a mansion here. We got an Epstein thing in Saudi Arabia. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. It feels to me like there's a ton happening with this case, but also simultaneously nothing is happening. It's like, where is this Brunel guy? He was the procurer. What are we going to do? And it's like, I don't know. Are you going to arrest him? And it's like, I don't know. We're looking for him. So it's like, are these people going to be arrested when they're found? There's also a really funny, some lawyers sent the judge of the case a letter, a John Doe letter, saying, essentially there's some guy out there that was so scared, he's sweating it out the end of summer, just so nervous that his name is going to come out if they release all these hundreds of papers that were sealed in 2007 regarding the Epstein case. He's sweating it out and was so nervous that he made his lawyer even before anyone was ever, no one even knows who it is. They just call him John Doe, but preemptively made his lawyer send a letter to the judge being like, do not release these papers. It could ruin a lot of people's reputation. I imagine him like contacting his lawyers and be like, you got to do something. Send the judge a letter saying don't release the papers. And his lawyers are like, no one is investigating you. It kind of comes off guilty to send a judge a letter saying don't release the documents about this child trafficking case because of our client. They're gonna, but he's like, just send it. Wild, so wild. So there's a John Doe letter that's like, please. And then, so like looking for the first time into the Clinton body count, like I said, there was one that I remember that stuck out. So in 2016, at the height of just political craziness in America, Hillary was running against Bernie. It was like cutthroat in the primaries, and then, eventually against Trump, and it's this crazy time. And as most of you remember, someone was leaking emails from the DNC, Hillary's emails to WikiLeaks. And, it just kept going. And there was a pretty young guy in his 20s named Seth Rich that worked for the DNC. And Seth Rich, walking home one night in Washington, D.C., gets shot and killed. And they call it a botched robbery, but nothing was stolen. And soon after he's dead, Julian Assange, who's now in jail for his whole WikiLeaks thing, which I don't agree with, Julian, in an interview, said he didn't come out and say it, but he really strongly pointed that this Seth Rich guy was the DNC leak that was sending the emails to him, which he was posting. And then a guy named Kim, kind of a weird, eccentric guy named Kim.com, he made $1 billion with Mega Upload, which I remember using for a while. You could just download and upload songs and movies and stuff. He tweeted right at that same time, Seth was WikiLeaks DNC source. Seth was killed for that reason. Seth is one of many Clinton victims. Seth is a hero for preventing Clinton. And then in the crazy political 2016 time, all of the right, like the Fox News people, one, because it's just a crazy story, this botched robbery where nothing was taken, and then the WikiLeaks said that's our source, and then this Kim.com guy, but also it makes the DNC look terrible. And so all the Fox and right-wing news starts really reporting hard on the Seth Rich thing. Well, Seth Rich's family, I'm pretty sure, was huge Clinton supporters. The irony. And so they came out and very strongly and were like, do not politicize our son's death. Do not make this about politics. You're using it to get your side to win and our side to lose. And they even started suing news and I think even independent content creators for making videos about it. To the point where today, if you search for Seth Rich, it's probably the least talked about high-profile murder that I've ever seen, which makes the whole thing just interesting. The few YouTube videos about it, like CNN does this weird propaganda feeling video about it, and it has like 5,000 downvotes and only a couple hundred upvotes, and to this day, no one really talks about it. An Australian news, I think they felt more removed and able to talk about it, but an Australian news YouTube channel did a story about it. But other than that, there's like nothing on this kid, Seth Rich, who was shot and killed. And I get his parents, if you feel like your son death is being used to win a political. I get it, but now it's been 3 years, and there's no suspects for his robbery. What's happening with that? I would love to. I would love to hear the homicide detectives who are. There's got to be someone assigned to Seth Rich, right? He shouldn't be forgotten just because it was tied to a political race. And it's also funny to be like, don't politicize our son's death. And it's like, he worked in politics. That's what his whole, that was his, it's like a race car driver dying racing cars and the family being like, do not make this about racing. And everybody's like, okay, but that's what. But yeah, the whole Clinton body count is just nuts. And another really good piece of recording, a guy named Chris Mogg did a story where he really dove deep into the flight records of Epstein, and he figured out that he would always go out at Teterboro Airport, which is in New Jersey. There's two main airports in New York City, and then just right across the river, there's a very small one named Teterboro. And if you remember what's his name? The pilot who landed how am I forgetting his name? It's like a one name. I think it starts with an S. I don't know. So a very famous plane, very famous pilot with a white mustache took off from LaGuardia. Birds hit the engine. They lost the engine, and then like you can listen to him and the air traffic controller talking, and the air traffic controller's like, "Can you make it to Teterboro? We can get you a runway there." Oh, Sully is his name, and Sully's like, "Negative. We'll be in the Hudson." And the air traffic is like, "What?" He's like, "We're landing in the Hudson," and it's famous. He lands it like softly into the Hudson River. Everybody survived. Great story. But this Chris Mogg guy went through all of the records, and so at the beginning, or for years, it would be like the first time someone rode on the plane, it'd be their full name. Or like if an underage girl rode on the plane, it would be her full name. And then after the first time, it would just be their initials. So it's hard to follow because it's all these initials. And then pretty interestingly, in 2007, when Epstein's whole shit hit the fan in Florida, the flight records went blank, which is illegal. And so it went from names and initials and everybody, and then in 2007, nothing. It's the pilot and the co-pilot flying an empty plane. So this Chris Mogg guy was saying, does a pilot get arrested for that? That seems to be pretty illegal, right? And also just something as simple as they've interviewed airports around the world that they would fly into, saying like, was it weird? Did it seem like they had underage girls with them when they got off the plane and walked across the tarmac? And the people are like, yeah, we all knew. It's pretty easy to see Madam Maxwell and Epstein, and then there's just three 12-year-olds. It's like, yeah, we knew. And then so the Chris Mogg guy brings up the point is, wouldn't the people at Teterboro Airport know too? Like, more people had to turn a blind eye to this than it seems like just thinking about it for a second. But that's about all I have as far as what I've been following. I was going to recommend a movie that came out in 2017 starring Joaquin Phoenix. It kind of went under the radar, but I liked it. So it's called You Were Never Really Here. And the plot is Joaquin Phoenix was worked for the military, and he worked overseas rescuing young girls that have been kidnapped or bought into the sex trade. And he's seen horrible things in these young girls, and he has PTSD. And so he's back in New York taking care of his mother, and in New York as an independent contractor, he goes and he rescues, and he's like this tortured guy, and he goes and rescues young girls, same thing, that have been kidnapped, and also hands out justice to the senators and kidnappers that kidnapped him, and his tool of justice is a ball peen hammer. And so this came out in 2007, but essentially it's about this, what we're talking about: the Epsteins, the Weinsteins, the politicians. It's a pretty cool movie. A woman named Lynn Ramsey directed it. I thought she did a really good job, and the guitar player from Radiohead did the whole soundtrack, which is pretty cool. So check that out. It's a pretty good movie about this whole thing. And then I couldn't help but thinking about the movie that I would want to do about this whole thing. And what that would be is, I'll tell you guys real quick. So it would open up on like a huge awards dinner, right? Everybody's dressed up and in ball gowns and tuxedos and sitting around big circular tables, and there's toasts being given, and the occasion is they're congratulating and honoring a guy named David Howell. And David Howell is, in my head, kind of a mix between Elon Musk and Bruce Wayne. Just a, and he, in the movie, he owns, and he's the genius behind a company called Space Journey. And Space Journey has just, at the beginning of the movie, sent an aircraft to Mars and got it back quick enough that a human could do it safely. And in the movie, you would set up that people really attach themselves to this story of Space Journey sending this craft and getting it back, because all the other news stories are about pervert politicians and sex trafficking hedge fund and Hollywood freaks. And so in this climate of a dark time in the news of, this space journey led by David Howell sends. So at this awards dinner, everybody's congratulating David Howell for the breakthroughs in space exploration and the ability to tackle the big problems that humans have. And it's, everybody's dressed up. And then after that night, everybody goes home and gets in limos and takes cabs. David Howell disappears. That's the last anyone sees of him. And he was a public figure. He was supposed to be on Fallon the next week, where they were going to sing karaoke dressed as planets, and he doesn't show up, and he's going to do the Joe Rogan podcast, and he's just gone. And at first, the public's joking, like, did he accidentally shoot himself to Mars, or is he too hungover from the party for making it back? And then the feeling goes from joking to worry, like, where is this guy? And people start calling in missing persons, and slowly the Space Journey campus, which was once a sterile, pristine, vibrant company, now the grass is overgrown and the bushes are overgrown and weeds are growing up on the once pristine the tarmac, and people are being laid off, and articles are coming out being like, Space Journey is a defunct company. Where is David Howell? And people are losing hope about, space travel, and all they're getting is news stories about horrible politicians, and people are saying he's abandoned us, and, loss of potential, and this whole thing. And then right as everybody is really just getting down on David Howell for leaving when he was just at the height of his career, Space Journey puts out a small press release that said they're starting a new project, a luxury skyscraper. And this will be the most high-tech, safe, skyscraper ever built, catered for the luxurious, rich and famous, and it can withstand a nuclear blast, and there's nothing will ever compare to this building. And news stories start coming out that it's sad that the once ambitious genius behind Space Journey is just a gross real estate developer that sold out to make some money. And it's, I picture like a lady being interviewed walking her dog being like, it's really sad that he just wants to make a buck. What he was doing with space was really inspiring, but now I don't like him. So the public opinion of David Howell is shifted, but they build this building, and again everyone is just doesn't like him and criticizing him. And then as the building is nearing completion, invitations are sent out, and hedge fund managers and world bankers and Hollywood producers start getting these really luxurious invitations saying that they're all invited for a night that will never be forgotten at the new Apollo building that's just been finished, the most luxurious, safe, high-tech building in the world. And they're all invited for one night to stay in one of the suites and to dance and eat amazing food. And so then it shows all these hedge funders and corrupt bankers and Hollywood producers all packing nice suitcases and being closed into limos and planes flying off and first-class drinks being drank. And they get to the party, and there's lobster and steaks and sushi and all the food and a brass band, and all of these people are dancing in this grand opening of this building. And still no one has seen David Howell for years at this point, and almost everybody's forgot about him or at least written him off as a sellout. And then so everybody parties and has a great time and eats, and then goes to their rooms, which are so high-tech and have saunas and computers and all the nine. And as soon as the last late-night room service is delivered and everybody's asleep in their beds, all of a sudden the staff, the smiley, helpful staff, goes stoic. And they all start moving towards the door and filing out of the building. And once they're out, they all get in buses and leave the premises. And then for the first time, so you haven't seen him since the first scene of the movie, it cuts to David Howell, who's sitting in an underground, subterranean, layer, sitting in front of a bunch of screens. And he's shirtless with safety goggles on, smoking a cigarette, and he's got a long beard and crazy hair. So as soon as the staff's out, it cuts to him smoking a cigarette, and he just goes, "Goodbye," and presses a huge button. And the Apollo building, which is actually a spaceship, right at sunrise, blasts off peacefully without destroying any of the properties or buildings around it. And the movie ends as it's in slow motion right at sunrise. This building shoots off into space, and it's shots of puzzled politicians with white hair looking out the window, scratching their head, as it just peacefully and smoothly shoots off into the distance of outer space. The end. All right, so that would be my screenplay about it. I hope that you're all having a great day. I love you all. Oh yeah, if you'd like to support the channel, I got a Patreon and a PayPal link in the description. It helps me out a lot. I'll see you next time. Why, Stuyvesant, why?